Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Mendocino, my name is Prabjot Singh. I'm legal counsel for the Sikh Coalition. I want to focus my questions today around transnational repression, and particularly with regards to the lead up to the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in June 2023. If the court operator can bring up TSC 60, please. Thank you. And if you can scroll down a little bit further. So, Mr. Mendocino, just that second paragraph. Scroll up a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Thanks. This is a letter that was sent to you by the BC Gurdwaras Council in July 2022, several days after the murder of Iripudaman Singh Malik in the Lower Mainland. So I want to draw your attention to that second paragraph in particular, where the letter urges you to ensure that the investigation into the murder explore the possible involvement of Indian intelligence agencies. So these kinds of concerns around extrajudicial killings existed a year prior to the assassination. And the letter also asks that attention be paid to whether Indian agencies or foreign actors have been involved in influencing the media portrayal of the shooting or the subsequent political discourse that is emerging across the country. Do you recall receiving this letter?
Not only do I recall the letter, I recall engaging directly with the community about this particular incident involving the killing of Mr. Malik as well as Mr. Nijjar. And I was very sensitive to the concerns that were written in this letter as well as the conversations that I had. I do want to point out that in my role as Minister of Public Safety, it was not for me, and indeed it would be inappropriate for the Minister of Public Safety to direct the police to undertake any investigation. And so the gist of the conversation was that I was in listening mode. I was trying to obviously be sympathetic to the concerns that were expressed, also to assure them that based on the briefings that I had, that police were taking these cases extremely seriously, and that regarding any potential connection between these killings and the government of India, that those were conversations that would go on within the intelligence and the law enforcement community. There were developments on that front, as you know, but they came after my time as Minister of Public Safety, and the most significant development would be when the Prime Minister made a statement in the House of Commons regarding the killing of Mr. Nijjar.
Just to clarify your answer, you're referring to a meeting with community leaders. Is that the meeting that occurred in July of 2023?
There would have been engagements before then, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but that was one of a series of ongoing conversations and engagements that I was having with the community.
Thank you. So I want to stick to 2022 for a second, and then we can move ahead to 2023. I want to suggest to you that in response to this letter, that community organization did not receive a response from the ministry or yourself, and no further engagement. Would you disagree with that fact?
I would. There was engagement with the community.
With the BC Gurdwaras Council?
It may not have been with the specific authors of this letter. I accept that, but there was definitely ongoing engagement broadly with the community about the killing of Mr. Malik as well as Mr. Nijjar. Absolutely, there was.
So in the summer of 2022, you'd agree that the contents of the letter communicate that there was concern that India may be implicated in a violent attack and engaging in disinformation around this specific incident. Fair?
Yes.
Thank you. Outside of this letter, were you aware of growing concerns within the Sikh community in the summer of 2022 specifically, so we'll stay with that timeline, that the government of India and its proxies had hired professional assassins to target Sikh activists in the Lower Mainland of BC?
I would say that generally I was aware that concerns were escalating in the community around the extrajudicial killings of people who were interpreted as being adversaries to the government of India from the community's point of view. Yes.
In the summer of 2022?
Roughly, I don't want to be pinned down to a precise season, but I would say coinciding with the killing of Mr. Malik, there was definitely an escalation of concern, and certainly leading up to the killing of Mr. Nijjar as well.
And were you ever briefed or made aware that between July 20th and 21st, 2022, an inset team in BC had visited the homes of multiple Sikh activists to deliver a duty to warn and communicating that they faced an imminent threat to their life?
Yeah, I am unable, according to the law, to talk about intelligence briefings in this forum.
Are you aware that in the July of 2022 that members of the community received duties to warn? We heard from a diaspora panel last week that spoke to that fact, an individual who received one of those duties to warn. So in general terms, are you aware that the RCMP warned members of the community that they faced potential threats to their lives?
I am not in a position to dispute what you have summarized as the evidence of members of the community, and I am not in a position to discuss any briefings that I would have received on the subject matter according to the law.
And during that summer, I'm going to suggest that community representatives directly communicated these concerns about transnational repression to CSIS. And I'm going to assume and suggest, based off of your last answer, that you're not able to provide any information or confirm that in this public forum. Is that
That's correct?
To your knowledge, no threat reduction measures or other steps were taken to proactively counter these threats in India's capacity to execute these assassinations in 2022. Is that correct?
Counsel, I think you know the answer to that question. I am not able to disclose in this environment what, if any, measures would have been taken by the public safety or intelligence community.
So we heard from officials from RCMP last week who gave evidence that in scenarios where an individual receives a duty to warn, RCMP may take some steps to inform the individual of how they may be able to avoid any kind of harm, but no protective services or other resources are provided to that impacted individual. So in effect, this places us in a situation where political activists who may be targeted by a foreign state are forced to choose between retreating from public life or continuing their activism and exposing themselves to risk. So I think you would agree that the lack of any resources in these scenarios would shock a lot of Canadians. In effect, it puts us in a situation where these states perpetrating repression may get their way one way or the other, either by forcing these individuals to retreat or continuing to expose them to harm. Is that fair in the current situation?
No, I would not agree with that. And in fairness to you, counsel, I think your question is embedded with many inaccurate assumptions and a fair bit of supposition as to how the law enforcement and intelligence community responds to threats of this kind.
So when an individual receives a duty to warn, are they provided any protective services or any other resources to protect them from harm and continue exercising their charter rights?
I think it's a fair question, and it's one that is best put to the RCMP and to other actors within law enforcement. They are the experts, and of course, as a minister, I have to respect operational independence. You don't want elected officials dictating the terms of an investigation, let alone the types of techniques that you are describing in some detail as to how we might protect individuals who could be the threat of an extrajudicial killing. So I'm not saying your question's unfair, counsel. I'm saying I think those are the types of questions that should be put to law enforcement, who are the experts and who enjoy that operational independence.
Thank you. And those questions were put to RCMP about those parameters, and they confirmed that no resources are provided. So I'm asking you, as the Minister of Public Safety, in a position to formulate policy, stepping away from specific instances, from a policy perspective, individuals who face the potential threats from foreign states for transnational repression, if they receive duties to warn and they're not provided protective resources, you would agree that that puts them in a very difficult situation that would impact them being able to actually freely and meaningfully exercise their charter rights. Is that fair?
Again, I think your question is loaded with many assumptions, but the responsibility of the minister is to ensure that police have the resources that they need to discharge their responsibilities and their operational investigations, including some of the techniques. But it is not for the minister to be directing police when it comes to the discharge of those responsibilities. So resources, yes, and I'm not privy to the evidence. I wasn't here for the exchange that you had with law enforcement, but they are the appropriate people to be putting those questions to.
So again, to clarify my question, as I reiterated earlier, I'm not suggesting that the minister would direct officials or agencies on how to do their jobs or interfere in an investigation. I'm asking from a policy perspective, would you agree that individuals who face the threat of transnational repression from foreign states because of political activism, that there is a gap where they're not provided protective services according to the current legislation and mandate of the agencies and how they function?
I don't agree with that. And I know that it is important that we equip police with the resources that they need to do the job. And that was something certainly that I did, my predecessor did, my successor is doing. But in terms of the operational decisions that are taken to protect the people who may be targets, how that is actually done, the job of the elected branch would be to be sure that they've got the resources to do that. And there may be some policy discussions that flow from it as a result of the evolution of this particular type of threat. But again, I think a lot of these questions are best put to law enforcement.
Thank you. Madam Commissioner, I have one final question, if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned this meeting that you had with community leadership in July 2023, specifically with the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara following the assassination. In that meeting, you were informed of a particularly alarming situation that following the assassination at Bhai Hardeep Singh's funeral, there was an individual who was seen recording videos and taking photographs of individuals attending, and the Gurdwara leadership informed RCMP of that, escorted him off the premises, and informed you of that incident. Are you able to talk about any follow-up that was conducted, either in terms of investigation or in terms of outreach and engagement with the community who's reeling from the assassination of a political leader, a community leader, and then being surveilled at his very funeral by Indian security agencies?
Certainly in terms of the investigation, I cannot, according to the law. But as far as engagement is concerned, yes, we remain engaged, and I know that my successor has remained engaged directly with the community because these are legitimate concerns. And I would say to you what I said to them, which is that I know for a fact that law enforcement and intelligence officials are taking this matter with the utmost seriousness.
Thank you, Commissioner. Those are my questions.
Thank you.